Morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone.
I got two of my favorite people on here today. I'm excited for this discussion. Jahannah James.
Who's the other one?
Greenyer.
Who's the other one?
The third guy? He's the technical help. Go away, third guy. Okay. No, it's just our heads on here now, just three heads.
Okay.
And we're going to put the heads together today on kind of a weird cross subject, working cold fusion and ancient history, right? Which can't get more fun than that. Mm-hmm. So I have two great representatives of both. And that's Jahannah James and Bob Greenyer. Jahannah being one of our speakers and Bob perhaps being one of our future speakers at the Cosmic Summit. And Bob has a channel called the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project that I've been watching 6 years or so, probably catch every fifth episode. But over that time, you see a lot of Bob, but he's a tremendously likable character.
I've just subscribed.
You're so kind.
Yeah. And then I figured, well, how better if we're going to talk pyramids and cold fusion with Bob than to loop in Jahannah, who is kind of catching up on the fusion stuff.
Yeah.
And is another great likable communicator, right? So it's just good to have you both on it. But Bob, you're kind of the center of attention for this, okay? And a lot of us know Jahannah. She's actually been in the foxhole with us a couple of times. But could you give us your origin story and how you got into this and kind of lead it perhaps to the pyramids?
Yeah, so very briefly.
Go right ahead.
Because of controversial character in 2012, actually 2011, I re-engaged my passion with an area of science that I'd been interested in since I could ever remember, because I was making my own solar panel concentrators and powering my bedroom when I was pre-10 years old and making a solar heater for my parents' hotel swimming pool using pipes. So I was always interested in energy. And this character, Andrea Rossi, very controversial. It doesn't matter. God works in mysterious ways. And he encouraged myself and 4 other people not known to each other to go to South Korea in 2012 to ICCF 17. That's the International Conference on Cold Fusion, Condensed Matter Nuclear Science Research. And there by day 2, we realized that not only had Martin Fleischmann died 3 weeks previous, that many other people were dying in the field, and they all had something. It all looked pretty similar, but they had 70 plus theories, and at least 69 of them were in whole or in part wrong. And some were working in solid state, some were working in liquids, some were working in plasma, but they were seeing similar transmutations. And if they had all completely different theories about how this was happening, it didn't make any sense to me. There had to be some underlying force of nature that was causing this to happen. And so we thought, well, no one wants to replicate anyone else's work because they all want to win the Nobel Prize. So it's not really, everyone's kind of in competition with each other. And when someone got a decent amount of success, some person with money, be that a government organization or an industrial party, would fly in and say, don't say anything because this is the way we're going to win. And I had a completely different viewpoint. My viewpoint was, throughout history, these systems have failed because greed and ego got in the way. And those are the easiest things to play on by those with money that would control. And so I then suggested to some people that seemed to be of like mind that if we could do this in an open way and do something that had never been done before, which was live open science, then we could, if there was a technology that was offered to us for independent testing, we could do this in a live way on the internet. And I imagine this system where we could have the data streamed 24 hours and the protocol published beforehand. Anyone could comment that thought they knew better, and so forth. And then people could actually do tests live on the internet whilst we're running the experiment. So they could comment and say, look, can you change this parameter and this parameter? And they would literally see the data live and the history. And so there was no cherry picking of data. So in Italian Nuclear Frascati Institute scientist called Francesco Celani, he presented at the conference and showed an excess heat technology. And he agreed to share his technology with us. We would build to his design as near as possible the technology. To cut a long story short, We failed on the first attempt because we changed something that he was going to do next. And it took a long time to realize why that didn't work. But we went back to his original experiment on our second test, which we started 12 seconds past 12 minutes past 12 on the 12th of the 12th of the 12th, California time, which I thought wasn't going to happen every other day.
Deliberately?
Yes, absolutely deliberately. I said, go, like that. And 2 days later, I was presenting in a military base in Rome to generals and stuff, the fact that we had achieved 12.5% excess heat. And this was under the excess that was reported by the claimant. But we later found by exactly replicating his apparatus rather than our own apparatus, that the people that had designed the apparatus, which were the instrument company that made the instruments, had underestimated the input power. And that brought his 28% excess heat down to about 17%, which was very much closer to our 12.5%.
A lot harder to measure than people might imagine.
Oh, yeah, it's very easy to, particularly if you're doing phase transitions to steam, very, very easy to miss the fact that the energy, the enthalpy of converting water into steam is so massive.
It's easy to defraud people too.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, that was something that a lot of people failed on persistently. Anyway, because of Rossi actually doing more theatrics in late 2014, we had proven that the very esteemed scientists had not read page 42 of the bolometer, that's the thermal imaging camera, that they were using to test what was called the Lugano reactor. And the guy that actually discovered the nickel hydrogen system was so incensed, he invited us to go and visit him. And this was weird because Francesco Piantelli we had tried to reach out to for 2 years, and it was only when we effectively unknowingly annoyed him that he invited us. So we spent a week with him, and one of the things he said is, don't tell nature what it is, let it show you. And that was quite profound to me because essentially all these scientists were basically telling nature what it was, what's going on, rather than actually doing what I much later found out was the right approach of Anaximander, who was the I think 600 BC pupil of Thales, who developed Thales' theorem, which is the spot with a ring and two lines, which is principal to the Masonic order. He actually studied nature and Egypt, and he's part of the Ionic sort of school of architecture, which I studied in my art at school. So and in fact, the term ions literally come from Faraday using a sort of red cabbage water or something and electrolyzing in the water and seeing over a magnet and seeing a vortex one way in red and a vortex the other way in like blue green or whatever it is, the cabbage water, the red purple sort of red cabbage water. And there was a polymath that came in and said, that looks like an ionic column. And so ions came out of Ionic architecture, which came out of this school of Thales and Anaximander, who learned their science they were the first people to do observational science. I know other people have been credited with that since, but he was. And it came from Egypt. So like there's this whole virtuous cycle where the actual form of this structure, which is a vortex and a counter vortex, the name given to ions, which actually cause this in nature to a large degree through turbulence, it actually came from the study of nature. So it's nature round to science, around to nature. It's like a virtuous cycle. And so if you go to, for instance, the frieze around the Parthenon, you will see like these vortex above and the vortex below, and they're counter vortices, but one slightly above the other, and one is a yin structure and one is a yang, and you'll see this all through ancient architecture.
As above, so below.
As above, so below, and it is fractal in nature, because to create a ring of anything, if you have a vortex like this, it'll just produce a straight line. If you have another vortex over here, it might pull in some of the stuff over here, and this one might pull the stuff up here. Then you have another ring. So even though I talk in my work about a 3-Tor structure, intuitively, when you understand that a loop can only be made out of 2 other loops, it's fractal all the way down to the the Planck's distance. It has to be, because you can't make a loop without it being, or at least it must be relying on some inherent vortical nature of how the universe works. And of course, everything goes in spirals. So so basically there was that, and then there was another moment where in this journey I realized in late 2016 that this had to be related to ball lightning, which is a natural phenomena. It's actually, it turns out, would appear to be the leader that does the discharging cloud to ground, ground to cloud, or cloud to cloud during any lightning. Okay. And one of the people in the world that was a leader in this was a guy called Ken Shoulders. So I kind of looked into Ken Shoulders' work at the beginning of 2017, and I realized this explained most of this field of low energy nuclear reactions. And I then started reading some of his work, and one of the only public interview he ever gave was with a guy called John Hutchison. And John Hutchison was interested in Tesla, and Tesla was obsessed, it turns out, with the Great Pyramid and how it worked. Now, this all comes into a weird kind of loop here, and it might seem super strange, but the Egyptians have a particular structure that's always associated with another structure. It's the Sothic triangle and the Ankh. Okay, the Ankh, some might say, is the precursor to the cross. Okay, and when you look at what John the Baptist, that the Masons are quite into, if you go into a Masonic temple, they have 3 pillars, and the center pillar is an ionic pillar. Okay, and John the Baptist was a leader of this cult, this Hebrew or Jewish cult, and Jesus went to spend time with them. I don't know how long that was, whether that was the 18 years he was so-called lost in the desert, but after that, either John the Baptist or Jesus or or whoever Jesus was, basically it would appear concatenated all of the learning from Sumeria, Assyria, Yin culture, the ancient Eastern traditions, the Slavic traditions, the pagan traditions, and so on, and combined this knowledge. And you can see this because if you go to the Macedonian coinage from about 430, 450 BC, you'll have these shields and then coins, which are called shield coins. But the actual structure on them is the Delphic double epsilon, like this. And it's actually called a thunderbolt. Okay. And it is the wheel within a wheel within a wheel structure. But prior to Jesus, they only have a line through the middle, which is technically accurate, but it gives you less information. After Jesus, they replaced the line with the row, okay? And the row is flow with torsion. So chi is the life force, and the life force is the density flux goes through the center with torsion, okay? And so that gives you the overall structure. So the first symbol of the Christian church was the sacred geometry, which you'll find in the Temple of Abydos, which I know Jahannah I'm terribly jealous that she's been there several times. And what a great video. That's the first video I ever saw of yours. Absolutely awesome. So thank you for that. But I want to see that so-called maybe laser cut symbol of the flower of life. But if you just take 2 of those circles down there, if you have a circle and another circle and it's at the radius, so the radius goes through the center point of each circle, that is the basic fluid dynamic structure. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't know anything about fluid dynamics when I started out this process, other than the fact my A-level science project was cutting different bowl shapes and having a huge tank of 330 liters on a desk and seeing which one would pull through water the fastest. I did a bit like that when I was doing my A-level science, but I didn't go into this kind of the vortex dynamics. So basically, if you do a circle half the diameter of that, you end up with like eyeglasses that meet in the middle. Yeah. And that is the central circle. Then you can go smaller than that and divide the circle into 4 across its central point, but delete the delete one of them and evenly space them out, and you have the basic structure. And this is the wheel within a wheel within a wheel. It is on those coins, but as I say, without the row. So it was originally chi and a line. So when you do these two circles, you end up with the first symbol of the Christian church, which is the Vesica Pisces, the fish bladder. Yes. Okay. And if you look at, if you cut a fish in half, it basically looks like that, actually. And if you turn the fish upside down, it actually has the safe zone is actually the fish bladder, where you're safe to breathe in this zone. But the other part is this row that goes through the middle. And like I say, that only came after Jesus. And the Coptic Christians, they took on board the Jesus understanding, and they combined that. And so if you look at the Coptic Christian art in the Coptic Museum in Cairo, they have this stele, which I very much want to see in person. But it is probably, for me, one of the most important scientific documents that exist, because it has Alpha and Omega on there. Jesus said, I am the Alpha and Omega. I took, because I just saw it before anyone published it, the fact that there is an Alpha on the so-called sarcophagus in the King's Chamber when I visited it on December the 26th, 2021. I have a very beautiful, extremely high resolution photo that I took of that. And it is Alpha at that point. It is not Omega. I don't believe in the whole, there is an Omega there as well, because that is the rebirth point. And I'll explain that when I come on to how the pyramid, in my view, is operating. I may be wrong, but it's ridiculous how it exactly fits the geometry.
Bob, I got distracted there for a second. What is the alpha of the pyramid? Where do you see alpha?
It's on the sarcophagus, but where is it on the sarcophagus?
It's on the back side, nearly along the center. I have incredible 50 megapixel images in 16-bit, 30-bit or whatever. It's on a Sony Alpha camera with a beautiful lens on it, and I just thought, oh, that's interesting. There's an alpha there. And
that must be the only glyph image anywhere on the pyramid, then, because nowhere else is it inscribed.
So I understand, and so some people say that there is an Omega there, and this came after I'd taken my photo. I'd actually been there in December 21, and then someone said, "Oh, I found an Alpha and Omega." I just don't buy that.
I'm still unclear. Where is it? Where is it?
It's on the back side of the top surface of the sarcophagus. So-called.
But there's no top surface. It's open on top.
Yeah, but it's on the flat top bit of the back side.
On the back.
So the most western edge.
Yeah.
If you go
through my pictures now.
Way along, there is an alpha there. And I think that is the center point of the structure where the matter comes.
There is. I've just Googled it. There is.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Cool. Can you show us a photo, Miss Jen?
I might have it here. I can dig it out later.
Well, Jahannah can do a share if she's having it not be your phone. But
I have a better photo than the one that's publicly out there, other than the one that I might have publicly shared.
Well, I don't want to go on a big Googling exercise, but I do want to see it.
The interesting thing is, at this point, I hadn't connected the sacred geometry with the fact that is the point at which new material is born. And it is, I think, exactly the point that it is born. And so if you look at this Coptic Christian 400 AD thing, they replaced the Sothic triangle and the overall shape of the ankh with something that looks more close to a Christian angel, but they keep the Sothic triangle ratio. And it goes into a circle which has a flower in it. And the flower then is showing the vortex going around this way. And then the combined nature of that is the vortex that goes to the center. And the crazy thing is that it is exact model of the 1775 design of the front door of number 10 Downing Street. Right?
You mentioned something about number 10, and I was like, number 10 Downing Street? How is that connected?
So, and here's the thing. In the center of the cross on the door on number 10 Downing Street, it has a 1 and then not a 0, it has an O. Right? And it's at 37 degrees. And no one has ever been able to explain that. But the O at 37 degrees is the one true power according to the Assyrians. and it's also the symbol of the living Christ. So the number 10 it's one true power through the word of the living Christ is what that number 10 at 37 degree means on the center of the door. And it's a big symbol to the world that we are controlling the world. And at that time, of course, Britain was. It was controlling the world.
Wow. It's like being in a Dan Brown novel.
Except this is all real.
So it is real.
That's just this disinformation.
Scott Walter's on hold right now. Let's patch in Scott.
Talking of symbolism, when I was watching your presentation and you showed that the pyramid structure with the circle, like the Masonic icon of that. Yeah, when I went to Egypt, I came back and I got myself an Egyptian tattoo that I designed, and then I saw your presentation, and on my arm I've got the pyramids with the.
Damn it! I wish I could see it. I'm just seeing JPEG artifacting.
You got terrible internet, Jahannah. We can't. You're all pixelated. Yeah, you're as bad as I've ever seen you on internet.
You look like an impressionist photo of yourself.
Yeah, you're like a Monet. Yeah,
I'm really clear in my video, and you're really fuzzy.
Maybe play with it. Okay, but that's fine.
I'll have to take a picture of it, but basically, I have
looks like a bruise.
No.
Oh no! I see it. I see it.
I'll come up close, but I've got.
You just
I see it now. Oh yeah, it flashed in. Oh,
okay.
I didn't know you had that.
Yeah, but
you're not far off, actually.
I know. I was like, oh, that's weird. I've got the pyramid with the circle around it. I was like, I've accidentally put the Masonic iconography on my
Did you do that before or after Egypt? When 2020?
I did it after 2020.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But
I don't feel too bad. It's not quite perfect. So as I understand it, the Masons came out of the Knights Templar, and the Knights Templar were they were basically looking after the knowledge with the Coptic Christians, and when the Roman Catholic Church threw them out, they went to Scotland, and I think the Scottish rites came from there, and then they started reteaching the knowledge through Italy and the Slavic countries and so forth, and they've been handing it down. And I don't know whether at any level, because my father was a very senior Mason, and he invited me in when I passed my 30th birthday, and I said, Dad, that's not my path. So I didn't want to ever be restricted with anything I knew. And so it's a bit weird for me, because learning this all subsequently, and I've had some people reach out to me and say, like, one of the first things that Masons get told is to read the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the sort of architecture of ancient Egypt. I'm thinking, well, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And I think it's to pass the knowledge forward. So, like, when you understand the structure, essentially the structure. So what it was at the beginning of 2016, I was asked to. I was doing a presentation for the Stanford Energy Club. Carl Page invited me to do a talk on the inauguration of the Stanford Energy Club at Stanford University. And I talked about, this was the first time I talked about my views on ball lightning. I did not mention Ken Shoulders at that point, but I did before we went in to my colleagues. And I said, I think this really does explain everything to do with LENR, low energy nuclear reactions. And then we got back to do some experiments back in Santa Cruz. And I sat down whilst the experiment was running. I was trying to find out how I could reach out to Ken Shoulders and, bend his ear a little bit and find out, what's what. Unfortunately, I found out that he died in 2013. I go, damn it.
Yeah.
And then, someone must have worked with him. He couldn't have done this on his own. And then I find out that the first US organization that reached out to help us was EarthTech Texas, who was set up by Hal Puthoff. And Hal Puthoff's colleague, Mr. Little, was working, and I used to speak through Marissa Little, his daughter, from 2013, when we observed this type of radiation coming out of our Chelani wires, and they immediately got in touch and said, how can we help you? It turns out that it was him, probably with CIA money, routed through this church guy who was at Chicken Foundation or Chicken Company. I don't know. It was the particular company that he supposedly earned his money in selling fried chicken or something. I don't know the exact
Very common business over here, Bob.
Yes. And
every club has someone
restaurant
in the
business can randomly have millions turn up. I know. So anyway, that's all speculation on my part. But to cut a long story short, they did the initial work trying to establish what John Hutchison done, and John Hutchison was using non-available radio frequencies and Tesla coils and disruptive discharges based on Tesla. So we've gone back to Tesla. Now, why was Tesla obsessed with this? Well, his father was a Orthodox Christian priest, and the priesthood also carried the knowledge along with the Templars. And so the priest, I believe that he wasn't guessing when he was doing things. He'd probably been taught it. A bit like I might have been accidentally taught some of this by my father without me even knowing it was happening to me, if you know what I mean. Because like my father drove me to my first crop circle, and that's the only crop circle I've seen in my life. He said, look, I've got something to show you. And he took me out to this crop circle. I go, okay, Dad, that's interesting. And I never mentioned it since until I was really looking into the fact that these might be related because of the way that you can create coherent matter standing waves in the ether by the structure of the straws and Grebennikov work and so forth. And the structure, the vortical fractal structure, the fractal toroidal structure, actually could be explained by the Childe-Bolton Observatory's 2000 crop circle and the 2001 crop circle. So if you don't know what that was, Carl Sagan and people in 1974 or 6, they sent out a message using the Arecibo telescope, which is now decommissioned down in South America, the largest radio telescope on Earth. You know, we are third planet from the sun. We've got little head, big body. We're made of these elements, and we've got 2 strings of DNA. And down the bottom, it had a area showing a dish and something that showed a wave and then the frequency of the wavelength, right? So that they could work out this is radio waves, it's at this frequency, they're using radio waves communication, right? In 2001, in August, I think it was 2001, there was a crop circle put into this field adjacent to the world's largest then movable radio telescope at Childe-Bolton Observatory in the UK. And at the bottom, replacing, I mean, it said like we live on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th or something planet from the sun, and we live on the 4 moons around the 4th planet or something like that. And we've got an extra element in our makeup and so on. And we've got a big head and little body. Of course, you would do if you're on an older planet because it would be bigger, and so gravity, everything follows. So, but down the bottom, it showed that their communication technology was this fractal toroidal structure. Okay, essentially Ra, the circle and the spot, the symbol for the sun, and you know, yep. that important symbol, which is also part of the Thales theorem symbol. It's the ring and the spot with 2 lines either side. But that is the fundamental structure, and that is the vortex key structure. And then they showed that it's fractal. And when I saw that, it looked like many of the structures that I was starting to see in the technology that I was looking at. And the reason I changed my whole way of looking at things at the beginning of 2017 and into 18 because I saw this interview with Ken Shoulders, and he was saying, like, it's so easy to not find stuff and you won't even know what you haven't found. Because people just weren't looking at the thing. They were being told they have to find neutrons and gamma rays and this and so on. But I started looking at things, and this sent me down this hydrodynamic structure. And then I saw these things in an ultrasound tank with water, and I actually videoed these hydrodynamic toroids. And then it started me thinking about these fractal toroids. And so when I saw that structure as a means of communication, I was actually confident enough to, with very little data, to actually have it on my wedding ring. And there you see it. That's
cute.
So I was willing to put that I was that confident, and so when you break it down, it's the shape. If you have a smoke ring, like from your mouth, like that, you know, you might have seen someone do it, or you can do Lord Kelvin in the 1900. he thought that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, nearly there. You're the man. Perfect.
Breeze in here would be better.
Yeah, in the breeze. So he thought that this smoke ring structure was possibly, and twisted versions of it in interlocking versions, was the structure of all matter. And I don't think he's far wrong.
I think he's dead right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so if you take a laser and cut through that, you end up with a structure which is exactly this.
Can you show any of the photos, Bob?
I have no idea on this system how to do that.
Oh,
if it was Zoom, I could say yes. I can see share. So yeah.
I mean, your stuff is so visual, and I want people to know that Bob Greenyer does not talk about anything that he does not do, make, or see.
I have to see nature doing it a number of times before I'll believe it's a real thing.
And I think that is an absolutely wonderful approach, man.
But I wasn't doing that until late 2016.
You've done a lot.
I was going along with the narrative that I had to find neutrons and gammas and X-rays and stuff, and I wasn't. See, my view changed because nature can't lie. As I said in my presentation, ICCF 25 in Poland this year, it doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't have an investor to please. You know, it just does what it does, giving a set of inputs. And you might have got the inputs wrong, but the answer is always the correct answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the correct answer. So if you see from a wide range of systems the same answer coming out, then something must be driving that underlying. And then Jesus said, like, we are literally made in the image of God. And we are. We're made in the program that underpins the entire universe.
Mm.
And it is the same program, whether you're in the center of a star or you're on the other side of the universe. It doesn't matter. And all sentient beings will have discovered this if they paid attention to the world around them. Observational science. It's all you needed to do. Step away from your TikTok, step away from, what you're told to think, and just observe.
Well, Malcolm Bendall says much the same thing. And of course, he walked the walk and went out to an island alone for 7 years. And
that's probably a great way to get in touch with nature, particularly if you're surrounded by water. I imagine it was an island with water around it, right? Not lava.
And he plays with the dolphins who make the toroidal rings. You know, they blow bubbles.
Yeah, of course. That was in my first slides in 2018. I had that in there. It was like I did these slides in 2018. Let me see if I can find some. I mean, I have
any juicy photos are appreciated.
Because your imagery in your presentation, I really got it, because you were breaking down what you were talking about with the layers of the imagery being like a lemon and then an apple and then like a ring within a ring within a wheel. And then when you were saying that, I was like, Ezekiel's wheel. And then you said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, what you're describing. And if I followed it correctly, did you discover that through the experimentation with the aluminium and the water and the sound waves? Is that how
I realize this? It's just not a discovery. No one can claim to discover this.
You found your way to that.
It's only a realization. It was first the hydrodynamic structure. In water in March 2017. Then later that year, I saw these strange radiation tracks that were coming out of ultrasonicated fuel, both on X-ray film and impact marks on polymer, and actually a track and a number of tracks on a masked webcam on the CCD. And then later, there was this experimenter sent me their reactor, and we saw these structures, which literally, that's the symbol of my blog at remoteview.icu, where you have something that looks like a birdie, which is the basic structure of the ankh without the loop, because the loop's the spiritual
Bob, can you call up the photo?
Maybe.
It's like an ice cream cone with a head.
It's kind of like that, yeah. And so it was a progression of things, and realizing that bottom part. I mean, like I say, most of what you need to know is in your face, and once you understand this, you cannot unlearn it. It's impossible to unlearn unless you get rid of your face and all of those around you, because it's literally in your face every day. And it's a bit of a joke to me because so around my neck here, I have, what do you think that is?
It looks like a Viking hammer.
Very good.
It looks like a Tesla. It looks like the logo for a Tesla automobile.
You know, don't you?
Yeah.
So this is the Ukonofsara, and this is the Finnish Thor's hammer.
Yeah, it looks like a Viking.
Okay, yeah. And this the actual Tesla's logo is more perfect. So whoever designed that logo, and if you go and look up the company name of that made that, I can't remember it offhand, but someone said this is a bit weird. They named this. They designed that logo. They've got it more accurate. So the bit down here comes to where the fire ratio of the spiral comes in. It literally comes in down here. The actual tip down here is correctly placed at the bottom of the Vesica Pisces. And everything about the Tesla logo shows that it is designed off the sacred geometry. Okay. But this here, this zone here, which is this bit of the human face, right? That bit there. Okay. That you change the properties of the physical vacuum, okay? And this allows you to travel faster than light, burrow through rock as if it wasn't there, travel through, water and air without any, impedance.
Bob, how did ancient people do that without some modern materials, or did they have materials? How did they accomplish that? The Egyptians, do you think?
They had copper and zinc.
Okay, and how do you put copper, zinc, and the pyramids together and get power?
Well, you don't need that. No, I'm going to explain how the pyramid works. But the technology gives you so many different ways you can work. So you need to create charge clusters. You don't even need to know they're there. You can just say you can do this, and it's magic, right?
Okay.
You don't need to know how it works. And in fact, a lot of people don't care how something works. Like, you know how to make a screening, how you do the screening technology on a microprocessor. The actual pattern that they create is a quantum reconstruction. It's a quantum. It's like it's a hologram, and the UV light is passed through that hologram, and it then creates the lines, because you can't create the lines because you get diffraction. So
Philo T. Farnsworth.
Well, it's
isn't it?
It's just you cannot do the level of line. So no one knows how that works, but people are using computers all the time. I don't think most people that are using a computer or a smartphone or whatever realize that Ken Shoulders, who spent 33 years of his life looking at John Hutchison, developed the screening technology for microelectronics. Also, as one of the things he did.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
He's not a nobody, right? So your question was again, so I can go back to it.
No, it's fine. Just.
No, your question.
Jahannah, you asked questions too. I'm sure you're full.
No, you had a very important question.
Well, how did they manipulate materials to achieve
so
without having things like carbon fiber and advanced materials?
So we are along this journey. Once you understand this structure, there's this guy called Frank Pilivka, and he was studying. Well, he was a child, and he was looking up at the Kansas sky and seeing these tornadoes tearing up these buildings and lifting large things into the air, and he thought, that does amazing things. I want to replicate that. And by the time he was something 50 or something, he'd done it, and he got a patent in 2001. And you can literally put a glass bottle, like a standard glass drinks bottle, into the bottom of this thing. 2 seconds later, it comes out as 1 micron fine gray powder. You can do the same thing with that aluminium can. You can throw in wet potatoes, wet rice, paprikas, peppers and whatever, and it comes out as a dry, free-flowing powder in seconds.
Weird.
Okay.
No, it's not weird. So when you look at his patent, and you overlay the sacred geometry that I derived from just looking at experiments, no maths, no preconceptions, no expectation of what would come out of it, just drawing what you see and putting the lines where they are on the geometry, that's exactly and precisely his patent drawing.
So I had some questions about this because I understand the wheel within the wheel, and I understand about the vortex and one creating matter and one like sucking it out, and I can understand it when if it's in the aluminium underwater with a sound frequency through it, and then I can kind of pull that out to be the pyramid, and I'm like, okay, so the pyramid structure would be you pump water through there, so you've got water plus sound, and then you have the granite and everything, and so you've got the wheel within the wheel within the wheel, and you said that if you use 2 spinny wheels in the very inner section that's going through the grand gallery, and then you said that if you added more wheels you would then get onto different tech, but I was like, how do you add wheels, because all this stuff's invisible, right? You wouldn't see it. It's like
so it's called helicity. Take
Okay.
a rubber band, and this is a description given in a 2001 New York Science Journal or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's by a guy called Dijkhuis. It's a bit weird spelling. I can't remember it offhand, but he's from Holland. And he was a ball lightning investigator. In fact, he actually has a company and in Holland, but he's not very friendly when you want to go and speak to him because it's a very closed system there. Mm-hmm. We tried. But he describes in this paper in 2001 where if you take a rubber band and you roll it on the table, it kind of twists up into kind of like a braided knot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You ever done that? Right.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
you imagine that's a plasma, and for every time it has a 180 degree twist, it causes what's called a pinch instability and magnetic reconnection. And then you get a soliton coming off of that. Now, if you take that soliton, that ring soliton, that little donut that's come off by that larger ring, so you've taken a big ring and you've stretched it a bit and rolled it along your desk, giving it some helicity. This bit's torn off and made a little ring. You do that again, rinse, repeat. Now, each of these current rings of plasma, they have a current loop around there. They have a magnetic moment here. They will link onto another magnetic moment. And so they create a tor of a tor. Now, if you keep rolling these things around and adding helicity, that is some turning moment, then they will iterate down and down and down and down and down fractally.
There's some good YouTube videos demonstrating that.
Sorry?
There's some good videos demonstrating that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the LPP fusion.
I wish we had one. Yeah, because it can be visualized.
Done better because, frankly, Tesla didn't know what he had, but he could do it, right? Yeah. John Hutchison didn't know what he had. Ken Shoulders did describe it in the way in his book Evie: A Tale of Discovery as a perfect monopole oscillator where the electric and magnetic fields cancel and you only get scalar and vector potentials propagating. And that is the description of Zeldovich's 1954 anapole. And this is what basic matter is an anapole, because like the actual structure doesn't radiate electromagnetic fields normally when it's a stable thing. Okay. But inside it might actually be, as Kelvin said, these kind of anapole structures. And all I mean by anapole is it doesn't radiate electromagnetic and magnetic fields. It still has scalar vector and vector potential. It's all a bit confusing. I'm sorry.
So yeah, like how would I, if I wanted to make my machine and the pyramid uses 2 inner donuts and the very smallest wheel, how would I add that to 48? Or how do they even...
Firstly, it doesn't need to be 48.
Okay.
It only needs to be this. And if it was aliens that sent us this message, right? Then they told you what you want. At each level, you only need 2 minimum.
You only need 2.
Right?
Okay.
You only need 2. Okay, and that's what you get in the experiment that we accidentally discovered, and that was a discovery, but it's not something that hasn't been discovered before clearly, which is the ultra experiment. This is just sound in water. Okay,
right,
and sound in water will always get above the level of impact energy you need to ionize the water. Once you have ions of hydrogen in there, they have their magnetic moment, and they will add their magnetic moment to the overall toroidal moment and scale as I've just been described in a fractal way. And so you only need the 2, and then it takes over. So there is this, I think I've got it on the wall over on the shelf there. There's this theory that the pyramid was a power plant. Okay, it may have been that, and it may have been a lot of things. Okay, I think it was 1, a healing device. 2, an energy generation and transmission device, with other pyramids being simpler downlinks. 3, a atmospheric manipulation device. 4, possibly a launch point. 5, a system for weather modification. And 6, a production unit for other elements and or what's called Hajar al-Falasifa, which is the Arabic for philosopher's stone, which will be condensed etheric matter. Okay. So, what happens in the Wind Hex, which, by the way, was bought by Kraft Foods in 2003. And if you've had a McDonald's chip or you've had like a cup of soup or something like that, it's quite likely that you've had processed food in this kind of device. It exists. We are currently reverse engineering it because you can grind up concrete, but you should also be able to grind up calcium carbonate. And if you grind up calcium carbonate, you end up with a fine powder of calcium carbonate. And all you need to do is add water and it recrystallizes and you get big blocks. So you don't need to carry big blocks. You carry powder that you use the same technology to create, which you're going to use to create the thing that creates the technology.
Our crowd is anti. What's the general name for that?
Geopolymer.
Yeah, geopolymers.
So I sat in a
not that we can't change our minds
in Japan. I sat in a thermal spring in Japan, and I'm looking at the wood that's in front of me, which is coated with this incredibly hard limestone. Now, when water is forcing itself through those cracks, it's producing a vast amount of turbulence. Wherever there is turbulence, there are these structures produced, right? It's carrying this material in solution. You can recrystallize this stuff just by adding a little bit of water to it. You could additionally heat up a small proportion of it and then throw it back into the structure and create a mixture between calcium oxide and calcium carbonate. And when you mix the two together with water, it will recrystallize and you'll end up with no shells in there. Like if you go to Pumapunku, like they have these rocks which are like on the base and they have the shells in, but if you go up higher, they like got no shells in them, right? It's all homogeneous. Well, why do the shells disappear in some rocks? Well, that's because you grind it up, right? But you don't need any fancy chemistry. You just need to redo this. So that is the construction period. Why do you use calcium carbonate? Because other than calcium 43, which is only, I think, 0.21% or a very small proportion of calcium, none of the elements are spin. Okay, now the vortex that's produced in this structure will manipulate spin matter. I will get to your question.
It's all interesting.
I'm showing you this sample here, which is we wanted to create a ball lightning in the reactor and try and work out whether there was some resonant phenomena. And I said to my colleague in Holland, I said, look, can you get 2 lumps of metal and just put them at an angle? And he chose a piece of iron, this piece of iron, okay? And he chose a piece of brass. Brass is great because this was available at the time of the pyramids, zinc and copper, right? Okay. Copper oxide is photoelectric at 4.5 electron volts. It will emit electrons. Zinc oxide is photoelectric at 4.1 electron volts. It will emit electrons. These help build the clusters. To cut a long story short, this was on top of here. Okay, like that. And look, it built the same structure that the pyramid is.
On the other side?
It's through it. So you have a lump. Can you see this? There's a little dimple.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And then on this side, it's got a hole. And it wasn't melting, but it started to fold this piece of brass up. Right? Because the force is so big, because copper 63 and copper 65 and zinc 67 are all spin nuclei. At the center of this, you have synthesized calcium carbonate and calcium carbon and oxygen are there. At the bottom of this, which is exactly where the subterranean layer or room is in the Great Pyramid, which is that little triangle where the end of my nail is there.
Yeah.
That's the same, right? That is, when you look at that under the scanning electron microscope, it has Maxwell's structure of the physical ether from 1864. It's hexagonal array. And that is where the toroidal moment it comes through.
What do you mean that is the pyramid? Is it the base, or is that looking at it?
No. The map of the pyramid is on the other side. Wait, let me turn it over. Let me get this right.
Hold on. It looks like a square to me. The pyramid is...
No. You have to see that's the pyramid. It's up here and down there, and it actually goes off the end of here. And the actual structure went off the end of here. And that is one side of the sacred geometry. And when you overlay it, it's absolutely precise. Maybe I can share that. I'll share that video.
Yeah,
I'll share those images.
Well, I'm open to parts of things being geopolymer, but the two issues I have with geopolymer for everything in the pyramid is that
No, it won't be. So there's a couple of components that will definitely not be geopolymer.
Right.
You don't give a shit about the bulk of the pyramid. It's just there to prevent people from going inside and
which is why they're all not a uniform. They weren't made. They're not uniform.
Completely irrelevant. The only ones
different.
The only ones that you need to be good are the casing stones.
Right.
They need to be fine marble. Why? Because you need to have a hydrogen cap on there. Because the whole thing is full of hydrogen.
Yeah.
Okay. Or at least above the Queen Chamber's entrance. So-called Queen's Chamber. And you need where the door came down to close the descending passage. That needs to seal well, but you could just put animal fat in there to seal it for when it's in operation. And the well, so-called well, that is just for the gases that are synthesized by not boiling the water, but actually using this toroidal moment, which is in this zone down here, that bit, the triangle bit there, that actually is separating the water and probably even separating the hydrogen oxygen bonds. So the oxygen comes up and it lives in the Queen's chamber, which I call the mother of all hyperbaric chambers, right? Because the oxygen will capture these clusters, and when you breathe them in, they have a lot of good health benefits and so forth. Because unless you've got cancer, because it will accelerate your cancer. But anyway, that's one thing.
I've breathed from the tailpipe of the Bendall machine, and it felt wonderful ever since.
Okay, well, I think there's better ways you can do that.
I've been absolutely at the top of my game since April 9th.
What was he putting in the fuel?
Not April, August 9th.
Well, I have a question about the Queen's Chamber then, because the Queen's Chamber and the Grand Gallery originally, before 1998, when they did a big cleanup, had really thick layers of salt, all in the Queen's Chamber and all in the Grand Gallery.
So the process also creates potassium. It also creates sodium.
So that would also okay.
Yeah. The other thing is potassium has one of the lowest work functions. Okay, all of the alkaline metals have lowest work functions. What do I mean by that? I mean that if they're hit by a photon, then they emit electrons. Right?
Okay.
So if you have a system which is glowing in there, then it will emit more electrons, which will feed the process. Also, potassium salt particularly has calcium-40. And calcium-40, according to Parkhomov, but I thought I realized it first, but there's always people there before you, right? There's a guy he's from the Russian Academy of Sciences, and I translated his book that he gave me in Moscow, in his Moscow apartment in 2015. By 2017, I go, I really need to read this. But and you know, there we go. But what it is, it's the second most unstable primordial isotope after uranium-235, and it's the first pure beta emitter. Okay, well, not pure beta emitter, it will emit a gamma ray, but most of its emissions are beta, and it's 1.551 million electron volts. So when this thing naturally decays, it ionizes the air around it. This entire process requires ionization of air. That's how lightning works. That's how ball lightning is generated.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I was to create this, I would want to get ideally potassium-rich salts, and I would coat the inside walls of it.
Okay, so it's maybe
it's a solid state thing. It's not acting as part of a chemical process. It's a process, and it's got I think its half-life is it 9 billion years or something. It's very small. I think I can actually tell you and go to our reaction couch. If you want to know anything about anything, we have a thing called nanosoft.co.nz. It was programmed with the data tables from Alexander Parkhomov, and with this guy Philip Power in New Zealand, who's a nuclear physicist. So if I go to show element data on nanosoft.co.nz and I go down to potassium here, sodium, blah 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 blah, 39. Not there.
Jahannah, we had our hands full with the ancient history and remembering dates and all of that and eras, and now you layer on chemistry and physics.
Well, the reason I was really interested in this theory because it's really pulled me sideways, because I've been researching the theory that the pyramids are industrial chemical plants, and they're literally laid out very much in the same way that modern chemical plants are. And there's the ACEDA project did a load of swab testing inside all of the Giza and the Dashur pyramids, and they found each pyramid has very different chemical compounds and elements that are in each one. And the theory is
that may be true for the other pyramids. The other pyramids may well be chemical plants, but I think the alchemy is alchemit. It comes from Egyptian, right?
Yeah.
And Hajar al-Philosopher is the philosopher's stone. So if you wanted to create elements from other elements, because as far as I understand it, gold, there wasn't a lot of gold in Egypt, but there was a lot of rock. So you only need prima materia, and you can start to work on creating other elements. But they were seemingly buying everything with gold and putting gold on everything and making big gold marks and stuff.
Because that's one thing when I was looking into like Chris Dunn or other pyramid theories, is that they tend to really focus on the Khufu pyramid, but like a theory that links them all. And because there's a couple of elements on the Great Pyramid as well that I think are really specific. Like the there's like an antechamber to the King's Chamber, which has the most insane resonance of the entire structure. Before you go into the King, if you stand up in that little, and it's got the weird slot marks, almost like there was. I don't think it's a portcullis.
Well, they say there's things that come down.
I don't think that was at all.
No, maybe not.
But that, how would that be part of? Because that doesn't. When you're looking at it as a map of having vortex A and B, how does that come into play? Because it's obviously very specifically made that way for a process, for a reason. But
honestly, I haven't thought about why that is there. For me, this journey was, this is this structure. Oh my God, the disruption zone, which we see when we take a Mars's HHO and we put it on tungsten, and it rips the matter apart in this lower area. It produces this lower matter plume that goes up into one side of the vortex, which would be on the eastward 7 meters off central of the the Grand Gallery. That would be where that flux of material goes up, and carbon is left there as a deposit because it's the first element that's produced by ripping the matter apart from that lower zone. That is a solid. The other things that go up will be protons. And if the feed material is water, so you could have a well in there that just comes up. Now, I know Petrie, Flinders Petrie, that he dug the hole deeper to see if there was anything down there, but you would only need to have water table to bring it up there. The idea that, I think it's Chris Dunn, you've had water pouring down the descending passageway. Well, there's no sign of perpetual water being put down there. They say that you would see the damage of water and it's not there. So you only need a very little bit of water. And in fact, what I would suggest you do, you have the water there and it runs the pyramid for a period of time and it shuts down because it runs out of water. It would be like a self-limiting structure. So I don't know. No, there's a phrase called that my dad always used to tell me. when the well runneth dry. He's a mason. Like, so I don't know whether it's that, because of that well in the Great Pyramid.
What if the Queen's chamber was filled
It's an
with
oxygen,
hydrogen?
because oxygen's heavier.
King's chamber in operating condition. Heat.
So the King's chamber starts. So if you look at ultra experiments,
Yeah.
right?